Okay students, let's see the next topic, Bohr's atomic model. So keeping in view the Rutherford's model and as well as the Planck's quantum theory, Niels Bohr proposed this theory. Okay, so keeping the, of course, which is nothing but considering the Planck's quantum theory and as well as accepting the Rutherford's model, Bohr proposed this. Okay, right. Now let's look about the theory. Out of all, the first one is nuclear concept. An atom consists of a small and massive central core called nucleus, around which the planetary electrons revolve. The centripetal force required for their rotation is provided by the electrostatic attraction between the electrons and the nucleus. This concept has been already given for us by the Rutherford. So that's what the reason why I told that accepting the planetary model and as well as keeping in mind the Planck's quantum theory, Bohr's model has been put forth. Okay, so nuclear concept has been already given by the Rutherford and that's what he accepted to, and that was his first postulate. Coming to the second one, quantum condition. This is the new one, which is nothing but, because regarding the energy considerations, the Rutherford's model failed to explain. That's it, right? The electron cloud can occupy, that was he gave that it can occupy while the spectrum was discontinuous, but he told that we must get a continuous spectrum, but the spectrum was a discontinuous line spectrum. So that was the reason why it failed. So now keeping that in mind, quantum condition has been given by the Bohr. Let's understand what was that. So of all the possible circular orbits, which is nothing but according to the classical theory, which is nothing but the wave theory, he told that, right, the electron can occupy any of that circular. So out of all that possible allowed by the classical theory, the electrons will be in the, or the electrons will circulate only in the orbits in which the angular momentum of an electron is an integral multiple of h by 2 pi. So out of all the many, like means just imagine that we have a nucleus here and around that there can be many of according to the classical wave theory. That's it, right? But out of all these many, the electron may take only a particular kind of or a particular orbit or the particular path in such a way that the angular momentum of that particular electron which is moving with a velocity v in an orbit of radius r, which can be given as mvr, and that should be equal to integral multiple of h by 2 pi, which is nothing but nh by 2 pi, where n starts from 1, 2, 3 and so on. So that was the quantum condition. Are we clear with this? Where L is nothing but the angular momentum, m is mass, v is the velocity, r is the radius of that particular orbit, and the n, whatever we are actually giving, that 1, 2, 3 and so on, is nothing but the very famous, which is nothing but the positive integer, of course obviously this will be, and that n is nothing but called principal quantum number, and this condition is called Bohr's quantum condition. Bohr's quantum condition, that L equal to mvr equal to nh by 2 pi is called. Anyway, we have a separate topic called Bohr's quantization condition. There we will discuss in detail how we got this, what makes him to equate all these two. Okay, so this is his Bohr's quantum condition is also the postulate, second one. Okay, right. Next, look at the third one, stationary orbits. So keeping the quantum condition in view and as well as the energy at the energy of the orbit, the energy of this particular orbit, what that attained, he introduced, which means Bohr introduced the new word called stationary orbit. And what do you mean by that stationary and all? We'll see this now. Okay, so as while revolving in the permissible or possible orbits, an electron will never radiate the energy, and these non-radiating orbits are called stationary orbits. So when the electron is revolving in these orbits, the electron, according to the classical wave theory, it radiates, but according to this quantum theory condition, what Bohr considered, the electron when as in this particular orbit, as long as it is in this, it doesn't radiate any energy, and those paths or those orbits in which the electron is not at all giving out energy is nothing but or does not radiating any energy is called stationary orbit. So the word stationary refers to it does not radiate any energy. Are we clear with this? Coming to the fourth one, frequency condition. So according to the Planck's quantum theory, the energy of each photon, which is nothing but h nu, E equal to h nu, isn't it or not? So every orbit has a separate or a definite amount of energy, isn't it or not? So keeping that in mind, an atom can emit or absorb radiation. An atom, remember, I repeat, an atom can emit or absorb radiation in the form of discrete energy of photons only when an electron jumps from a higher to lower orbit or from a lower energy to higher energy orbit respectively. Remember the condition, which means if the electron is jumping from high energy orbit to lower energy orbit, it radiates the energy, while if the electron is jumping from low energy orbit to high energy orbit, it absorbs the energy, because the energy has to be needed, right, for the jumping under. Okay, so if we call E1 and E2 are the respective energy levels, which is nothing but E1 is the lower energy level, E2 is the higher energy level. Okay, then frequency of the emitted radiation can be given as E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu. Very famous relation, E2 minus E1 equal to h nu. Are we clear with this? This is the Bohr's frequency condition, and of course the frequency of the emitted or absorbed radiation, nu is nothing but frequency of emitted or absorbed, which means suppose let me draw here. So this is the nucleus, and around this the possible orbits I have taken different of, suppose from third, second, first. If let's say suppose an electron is jumping from third to first, let's say suppose, it must lose the energy, since because I am calling that E3 greater than, E2 greater than E1. Out of all that, the third orbit is having the greatest energy. So for that particular purpose, E3 minus E1 we will consider, and that difference of the energy levels of these two will be nothing but h nu, where nu is nothing but frequency of that emitted. Suppose here is the electron, and if you supply the energy, and that will jump to the higher energy orbit, and that energy, which is nothing but difference of that, will be absorbed. So when you supply the energy, obviously the electron will go for that higher energy level. Are we clear with this? Okay ma? Right. Now let's look about the Bohr's quantization condition. I told you right already. So how we got that MVR equal to NH by 2 pi and all. So let us say suppose an electron is in a circular orbit of radius r, and according to the de Broglie hypothesis, this electron, which is having a mass m, which is moving with a velocity v, should be associated with a matter wave, isn't it or not? And now this wave character will be associated with that. Thus the circular orbit can be taken to be stationary energy state only if it contains integral number of de Broglie wavelengths. Thus the 2 pi r, which is nothing but the circumference of the orbit, should be equal to the integral multiples of the wavelength. This is right for one wave, this is two waves, these are three waves. So when you consider this linear motion, like join them end on end to end, if you join this wave end to end in a circular motion, look here in the circular path, if you do that, so see here, crest, and this is the trough. While for the second, look here, started here, one wave, second wave. Now look here in the third, as the size increases, the clarity will be more and more. So look here, one wave, two wave, and the second wave, and this is the third wave. So first, second, third waves. So we are actually inscribing this waves in the circular path. Are you getting the point here? The different shapes represents, that's what. Thus the entire wavelength, which is nothing but from here to here, right, any distance between any two points which are having in the same phase, that's it, right? So will be equal to the circumference of that orbit. So 2 pi r will be equal to integral multiples of the wavelength. We can never have a half wave, right? So it will never be possible that 1.5, 2.5, 3.6 like that it will be. It will be always an integral value like 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, obviously. Thus the entire circumference should be equal to always integral multiples of the wavelength n lambda. Thus, as lambda equal to h by mv, which is nothing but the de Broglie wavelength, can I write down the 2 pi r equal to nh by mv? Can I write down in the place of that? So angular momentum, look here, mvr, if I bring this mv to this side, mvr will be equal to nh by 2 pi. Now are you getting the point how I am writing that integral multiples of h by 2 pi? This is what Bohr's condition, whatever we are speaking about, the second postulate, Bohr's quantization condition. Are we clear with this? So angular momentum L equal to mvr equal to nh by 2 pi, where n is nothing but the principal quantum number, which is nothing but. Are you getting here? Are you getting the point here? Okay ma? Remember this quantization condition, of course, which is nothing but given by the Bohr. Okay. Thus, only those circular orbits can be allowed stationary states of an electron in which its angular momentum is an integral multiple of h by 2 pi. Are we clear with this? Okay ma? Right. Now let's look about the second one, or the next topic, Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom. So here we will discuss about the exclusive regarding the hydrogen atom. We will consider the hydrogen atom and we will go for that different values related to that. So according to the Bohr's theory, a hydrogen atom consists of a nucleus with a positive charge Ze, that's it, right? One proton. So Ze and a single electron of charge minus e, which revolves around in a circular orbit of radius r. Okay, here Z is the atomic number and for hydrogen Z value is nothing but 1. Now the electrostatic force of repulsion or attraction between the nucleus and the electron, can be given as K into the force between the nucleus and the electron, which will be obviously the attraction force, and that can be given as F equal to K into Ze square by R square. Can I write down? Okay, right. Now as the electron is continuously in a circular path, obviously this electrostatic force should be completely balanced by attraction, right, and this should be completely balanced by centripetal force. Hence kZe square by R square equal to mv square by R. R cancels out, and from there I can get R equal to kZe square by mv square, and mv square equal to, which is nothing but, remember this is very useful for us when you are discussing about the energy consideration. So mv square equal to kZe square by R. So this is what the expression for R. Look here, we have many variables. So now let us remove that, because velocity is also a variable. If the moment when you change the orbit, obviously it will change, right? So now let's go for that elimination of that. And according to the Bohr's condition, we know that L equal to mvr, which is nothing but nh by 2 pi, right? Hence, can I write down that R equal to nh by 2 pi mv? Okay, now I am going to substitute these two, which means nothing but this is also the expression for radius, this is also the expression for radius. Now I can equate them, right, which is both. This is from Bohr's quantum condition, Bohr's quantization condition, which is nothing but, and now while this is from the force equation of that, right? So now if I equate them, look here, I am eliminating R, that's it, right? I am equating R. Thus what I will be left over with velocity v equal to 2 pi k Ze square by nh. Are you getting the point here? Okay, so look here carefully, 2 pi constant, k constant, Z value for that particular hydrogen atom anyway it will be Z equal to 1, E charge of the electron constant, N for that particular, which is the variable, H is a constant, V inversely proportional to N. Did you notice it here? V inversely proportional to N we got here. Remember, very useful for us in the later development of the topic. Okay, right. Now substitute this value of V in the expression R, which is nothing but, we have already got this, right? R equal to nh by 2 pi mv. Let us substitute this V value here, since because nh by 2 pi mv into 1 by V. That's it, no? So now I am going to substitute that. So R equal to nh by 2 pi m into, in the place of V 1 by V I am going to substitute. So nh by 2 pi k Ze square. Upon simplification, of course, this gives me the radius of the orbit, n square h square by 4 pi square mk Ze square. Look here, all the values are constant. H is a constant, 4 pi constant, m constant, k constant, z constant, e constant. So what is the only variable there? R proportional to n square, where n is nothing but principal quantum number. That's it, right? And keep that in mind, this particular value, whatever I are actually calculating, this R value, radius, is nothing but the radii of permitted orbits. That's it, no? Not in all the orbits the electron will be. That's it, right? According to the classical wave theory, the possible values of the orbits are many, but Bohr stated that the electron will only enter into that orbit which is having an integral multiple of h by 2 pi, angular momentum should be. So there are only permittable values of the orbits alone, and that radius is directly proportional to square of the n value, and the ratio of that particular radius will increase, and obviously if n equal to 1, 2, 3, if we substitute there, look about the radius, this entire value will be always constant, right, which is nothing but h square by 4 pi square mkz e square is a constant. So r proportional to n square. So the radius will keep on increase as in the ratio of 1 is to 4 is to 9 is to 16 is to and so on. That's it, right? Square of the number. And this parameter n is nothing but called as principal quantum number. Are you getting the point here? Okay. And the radius of the innermost orbit of the hydrogen atom is called Bohr's radius and can be determined by substituting z equal to 1 and n equal to 1, and that's what we are calling it as r naught, innermost orbit out of the first one, which is nothing but if n equal to 1. So and z, of course, for the hydrogen atom, right? So for z equal to 1 and n equal to 1. Okay, if I substitute that value, look here in this, if I substitute that, I can get h square by 4 pi m k e square. This is a constant. Are you getting the point here? So it is 0.53 angstrom. So whatever the next value, it will be of this multiple, which means for an example, this entire value we have substituted at h square by 4 pi m k e square, keeping z equal to 1 for hydrogen atom speaking about, keep that in mind. So for the next orbit, it is 4 into this value because n square no. So 4 into this. For the third, 9 into 0.53 angstroms, all these values of. Are you getting the point here how the value will be varying here? Is that clear, ma? Right. So now coming to the velocity again, look here, in the previous we got that, right, 2 pi k z e square by nh. So that's what I am considering here. Now multiply and divide with c, this velocity expression here I am doing c by c. So keeping that c by n aside, this c by n aside, look about all the remaining values, 2 pi k e square by ch, that's a constant and I am calling it as an alpha, and that alpha is nothing but fine structure constant, which is a dimensionless, and the alpha value is 1 by 137, 1 by 137. And keep in mind that for the first orbit, that means if n equal to 1, we will be nothing but c by 137. That's it, no? Obviously c by 1, alpha is 1 by 37, n became 1, what happens? C by 137. Are you getting the point here? Now for n equal to 2, c by alpha is already 137, 1 by 137, so c by 2 into 137. Are you getting the point here? So respectively it will keep on. Are we clear with this, ma? Therefore the speed of electron in the innermost orbit is 1 by 137 of speed of light in vacuum, while the speed in the outermost orbit varies inversely with n, which is very clear from this expression. V equal to alpha into c by n. Alpha is 1 by 137. So now I can write it as c by n into 137. Can I write down? That's what I am speaking about. And remember, this alpha is fine structure constant. It is a dimensionless parameter. You can verify this because of after substitution of all these values here, dimensional formulas and all, you can get that. Obviously we can prove. Are we clear with this? Or else simply look here, just I am telling you the shortcut, whether not only for this, for the other equations also, v equal to alpha into c by n, and we are telling that it is a constant value. Forget about this for a while, that we don't know the value, that alpha is 1 by 137. V equal to c by n. N is a principal quantum number, we know this, it's a number, so obviously number is a dimensionless quantity. Right hand side we got c, that's it, right? C is velocity of light, and here on the left hand side we are speaking about the velocity of the electron in the orbit. So in order to keep this equation proper and dimensionally, alpha should become a dimensionless constant, that's it, right, from the principle of homogeneity of dimensions. Hence alpha is dimensionless, or else you verify in order to check that. Okay, right. Now let's look about the energy of the electron. Okay, because whenever we speak about the energy of the electron includes kinetic energy and as well as electrostatic potential energy because of both the charges. So keeping them in mind, so I can write down the total energy is nothing but kinetic energy plus potential energy. Kinetic energy of the electron in the orbit can be given as half mv square. You can see here clearly. And mv square we already got earlier in the beginning of that derivation. Do you remember? That's why I told you mv square equal to kz square by r. We have already derived this. So multiply with half on both sides, kz square by 2r. That's it, right? That's what I am doing here, kz square by 2r. Now potential energy, it's nothing but summation product of that, right? So 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q1 q2 by r. So k into Ze, charge of the nucleus, and minus E, charge of the electron, whole divided by separation is r. So minus k Ze square by r. That's clear. Now total energy can be given as summation of kinetic and potential energies. Look here, this is what, right? The final answer is minus k Ze square by 2r. You can ask me that, sir, what about this negative sign? And because at the end also we got beam propagated. That's it, right? And look here, I have substituted r value also, so that's why I am not specifying here. Look here, kz square by 2r, r value earlier we got, right, already in this, n square h square by 4 pi square mkz square, and I am going to substitute 1 by r, reciprocal of that. So 4 pi square mkz square by n square h square. If I substitute all these constants, and I have been left over with minus sign here, this negative sign or the negative value of the total energy indicates that the electron is bound to the nucleus by means of obviously electrostatic attraction, and some work we have to perform in order to pull the electron away from the nucleus. And that's what the, right, we speak about ionization potential, ionization energy later at the end of the chapter. Anyway, we have there, we can discuss about. So this negative sign indicates that this is nothing but an attractive, which is nothing but there is an attraction between the electron and the nucleus. The electron is bound to the nucleus. Are we clear with this? Look here, 2 pi square is a constant, m constant, k constant, z constant, e power 4 constant, h square constant. We can get En is inversely proportional to n square. Are you getting the point? Anyway, in the energy diagram we will get this expression again. There we can discuss in detail that very well known equation for you, most handy, minus 13.6 by n square. Do you remember that? Minus 13.6 by n square electron volt. We use, right? That's what. Using that alone, later we will draw the energy level diagram. Okay, right. Now let's look about the spectral series of the hydrogen atom. So just now we got the expression for energy as minus 2 pi square mk square z square e power 4 by h square into 1 by n square. Keep this as nothing new I am doing. I am making all the constant aside. The only variable I am writing it as 1 by n square. Now according to the Bohr's frequency condition, E2 minus E1 equal to h nu for two different energy levels. That's it, right? Which means n value will vary. So I am calling it as n1, n2 for two different values. Okay. So 2 pi square mk square e power 4 by h square of 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. Can I write down? Don't confuse here. It's n2 minus n1, negative sign with that. If I multiply that, it will be obviously right. 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. Understand this term. So obviously you will be get positive here. Okay. Because frequency can't be negative, right? So that's why I am representing. So nu equal to, from that, since because it is E equal to h nu, I need frequency of that radiation, whatever it is which is coming out. So nu equal to, how I can get here, which is multiply this h to this side or get this or divide the on both sides, 2 pi square mk square e power 4 by h cube of 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. Are you getting the point here? Is that clear, ma? Right? Okay. Now as we know that they will travel almost with that, photons will travel with the speed of light almost, c equal to nu lambda, v equal to f lambda, that's what I am representing. So c equal to nu lambda, and now I am going to write down the reciprocal of this wavelength, which is nothing but we call it as wave number. Nu bar is wave number which is reciprocal of wavelength, which means nu bar is 1 by lambda. Nu bar is 1 by lambda. That's what I am going to write down here. Okay. So 1 by lambda means nu by c. That's it, right? I need 1 by lambda. So nu by c. Nu I am already having here. So I have to multiply with 1 by c for this expression. So 2 pi square mk square e power 4 by c h cube of 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. Sir, what is the need of studying this, sir? This entire term, this 2 pi square mk square e power 4 by ch cube, we call this entire term to be as Rydberg constant, and we'll write down this equation as, look here, I am writing nu bar equal to R of 1 by N1 square minus 1 by N2 square. Are you getting the point here? A very important equation. Very important equation. Nu bar equal to. Are we clear with this, ma? R bar of 1 by N1 square minus 1 by N2 square. R is called Rydberg constant. RYDBERG. RYDBERG. Rydberg constant. Remember, and this formula, whatever you are calling, nu bar equal to R of 1 by N1 square minus 1 by N2 square, it's called Rydberg formula, and Rydberg constant value is almost 1.09. You can call 1.1 into 10 power 7. 1.1 into 10 power 7. What it should be? Nu bar 1 by wavelength, right? So meter inverse. Obviously, what is the dimensional formula for Rydberg constant? Capital L inverse. Are you getting the point here? 1.1 into 10 power 7 meter inverse is the value. Look here, I have mentioned. And while for this dimension formula is L inverse. Is that clear, ma? And that above equation, which is nothing but nu bar equal to R of 1 by N1 square minus 1 by N2 square, is called Rydberg formula. So keeping this value in this equation in content, which is this equation in content, now we will plot the spectral series of the hydrogen. So when the electron jumps from one particular orbit to the another particular orbit and from one particular kind, so all that these energy or you call it as this jumping of the electron from one particular orbit to another particular orbit has been clearly explained by different series of arrangement, and those are nothing but spectral series. So the proper arrangement of the electron transitions between the different energy levels is nothing but spectral series, and that's what now we are actually going to discuss about. Okay, and different scientists have identified in different regions. They are nothing but Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, Brackett, Pfund. So respectively, the scientists who identified them, they have named the series by their names. So if the electron jumps to the first orbit, if the electron jumps to the first orbit from any of the higher orbits, which can be from second, third, fourth, and so on to the first orbit, and we call that transition is nothing but, that series is nothing but Lyman series, and that can be obtained by substitution of the values. You can notice there N1 is obviously, N2 is, it can be of any, k equal to 2, 3, 4 and so on. You can notice there in that expression. Similarly, when the electron jumps to the second orbit from any of the other orbit, from the higher, remember that, from the higher alone. So here N1 is 2 for us, and while for the remaining values are 3, 4, 5 and so on. Okay, hope you are getting the point here. This in both you may look like n, but the actual thing is there one is n1, the other one is n2. So this is n1, this is n2. Similarly, this is n1, this is n2. No need to confuse here. Whenever when you substitute, you will understand. Remember, for this kind of, you have to mandatorily practice these equations, obviously. Okay, and this particular series is called Balmer series, and this series will obtain in visible region, while the previous, the Lyman series, will obtain in ultraviolet region. Coming to the next one, if the electron transition takes place to the third orbit from any of the higher, and that is called Paschen series. And of course here also this is n1, this is n2, 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square, respectively, or the other one from any of that to the fourth, we call it as a bracket, and of course from any of that to the fifth, we call it as Pfund. So all these are Lyman, Paschen, Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, Brackett, Pfund series. You can notice here, this is the spectral series what we are actually speaking about. Are we clear with this? Brackett and Pfund series will be obtained in higher region. All Paschen, Brackett, Pfund will obtain in infrared region, IR region. Look here, this is what the entire series is. I have taken 7 spectral series of. So if the electron jumps from any of the to the first orbit, look here, this is first orbit, right? So any to the 1, clear, and any to the 2, and any to the 3, any to the 4, any to the 5. Have you seen here? This is what Lyman, Balmer, Paschen, Brackett, Pfund. Are we clear with this? Okay, right. Now let's go to the energy level diagram for hydrogen. So we have already calculated this expression for energy, right? So I told you already, if I substitute all these values, I will be left over with minus 13.6. If I convert that into the electron volts, it will be minus 13.6 electron volt by n square, minus 13.6 by electron volt by n square, or minus 13.6 by n square electron volt. So that was the value. So for different values of n, if I substitute, I will get the respective energy levels. And keep that in mind that for n equal to 1, here we call it as n equal to 1 is nothing but our ground state energy level, while all the remaining which is nothing but E2, E3, E4, E5 and so on, they are nothing but our high energy states. Remember, don't confuse here, E1 is the ground energy state or the ground state energy level, while all the remaining levels, that is E2, E3, E4, E5 and so on, all these levels are nothing but excited energy states. Look here carefully, all these there is a difference, definite value of difference, right? For all this E1 minus E2, E2 minus E3 or E1 minus E3, E1 minus E4, for whatever the combination you take, there is a specific amount of difference of the energy for all these energy levels, and that's what we call it as energy quantization. So an electron can have only certain definite values of energy while revolving in different orbits, and that's what we call it as energy quantization. So by a minimum amount it will obviously, so in the ground state, this is what the minimum energy it will possess, while in the first excited state, second excited state, third excited state, fourth, fifth and so on. Don't confuse here, E1 refers to ground state, E2 refers to first excited state, because in the problems you will be confused with this particular condition alone. So that's why I am repeating again and again. E1 refers to ground state, E2, E3, E4 refers to first, second. I have mentioned that's what the reason why. G refers to ground, first excited state, second excited, third, fourth, fifth. So keeping them in mind, look here, as you go for the substitution of the values, the difference is getting much smaller and smaller. Look here, minus 13.6 for the ground, later for the first minus 3.4, later for the second excited state minus 1.5, fourth excited minus 0.85, fifth excited minus 0.5, fifth excited minus 0.3. So did you notice the energy levels are getting closer and closer? So now if we plot a variation in the of that particular energy levels, this is what. So n equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for all this. So ground state, first excited, second excited, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh and all up to infinite. So we can calculate that, right? Obviously. So different energy levels. So if the electron jumps from any of the higher state to the first, we call it as Lyman series, and this is what here you can notice. And this is Balmer series, any of the higher energy level to the second. Paschen, any of the higher energy level to the third. Bracket, any of the higher energy level to the fourth. That's it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And energy of the higher level to the fifth. Have you noticed that here? So Paschen bracket fund will fall in IR, Balmer in visible and Lyman is ultraviolet. Are we clear with this? Students, again I am telling you, most of the people will confuse with energy level diagram, spectral diagram. Remember, this is our energy level diagram. This is our energy level diagram. Don't confuse with this. The earlier what we have seen is spectral series, which is nothing but this one. This is the spectral diagram. This is the spectral series. This one is spectral series with different series of. This is energy level diagram. Here we will specify about the energies also, while in the previous we speak about only the number of this particular orbits, while here we speak about the energy also. So don't confuse with this. Are we clear with this? Right. Now let's look about the limitations of Bohr's theory. First one is this Bohr's theory is only applicable for hydrogen and fails in the higher energies or the higher orbits. Whenever we consider for higher energy higher atoms of having greater atomic number greater than z, z equal to 1, if we consider greater than 1, if z equal to, then for all those atoms this theory is not at all applicable, and it is unable to explain the features of the hydrogen spectrum. The features of the hydrogen spectrum refers to the spectral lines whatever we got, that different lines we have seen right already, they are not single lines actually. They are like a bunch of, or they will be a group of very closely spaced lines with a very different variation in the frequency, very light variation in the frequency, or you can call it as there will be a difference in the frequency of those very closely spaced lines. Bohr's theory was unable to explain why those lines are as a bunch even though there is a frequency variation, and why not they are a single lines. Okay, and coming to the next one, it could not explain why the orbits are circular, which means it was unable to explain why only circular orbits we should consider, why not the elliptical orbits also, why elliptical orbits are also possible, right? So later anyway in the next development of the theory we have orbital theory, which is nothing but when you consider the elliptical orbits, that theory also we have. Okay, but not in your syllabus, but there is a theory regarding the atomic structure by considering the orbitals in the oval shape, okay, which is nothing but elliptical orbits. Okay, and not only with that, one more point I forgot to mention, that this electrons exhibit wave properties also. That's obvious, right? Hence the orbits of the electrons cannot be exactly defined as like in the Bohr's theory, because there will be a variation, right, obviously, and how we can actually define. So that was the one more failure. Coming to the next one, Bohr's theory could not explain relative intensities of spectral lines, which means this theory was unable to tell us anything regarding the relative intensities. Strictly speaking, relative intensities refers to for the different various spectral lines, the variation in the intensity, which means with respect to one another, the intensity of each and every line are different. And Bohr's theory predicts only the frequencies of these lines alone, which we have already got, that nu bar equal to, but it was unable to explain why there is a variation in the relative intensities. And coming to the next one, most important one, Zeeman and Stark effects are not explained. Zeeman and Stark, the most important one, whenever an electric field or magnetic field are applied to this particular atom what we have taken, the energy levels what we have taken will split up into the furthermore, which means suppose if I apply magnetic field, if magnetic field is applied, the spectral, the energy level spectra, whatever we are actually speaking about, further will be divided, and those splitting of the energy levels of one particular energy into various categories is nothing but in the higher energy states I am speaking about, ground state, the let's say suppose first excited state. This first excited state will be further divided into many subatomic energy layers of many energy levels, and that deviation was expected whenever magnetic field is applied, and this splitting of spectral lines when magnetic field is applied is called Zeeman effect, magnetic M. So don't confuse here, magnetic no, so Zeeman M sounding. Okay, so this effect is called Zeeman effect. Well, coming to the next one, when electric field is applied, even in that case also the splitting of the spectral lines is actually happening, and that is nothing but Stark effect. So Zeeman and Stark refers to these two effects. So Bohr's theory was unable to explain regarding these two. Are we clear with this? So these are the limitations of Bohr's theory. Coming to the next one, excitation energy. So I told you that already the amount of energy required with the, because the electron needed some energy, the electron is bounded to the nucleus. In order to remove that, we have to perform some work, and of course we call them to be as, if we supply potential we call it as ionization potential, and or we supply energy we call it as ionization energy. So that's what now we are going to speak about. Coming to the first one, excitation energy. The excitation energy of an atom is defined as the energy required by its electron to jump from the ground state to any of the excited state, from the ground state to any of the excited state, any of the excited. Say let's say suppose if I am considering the second one, we have already calculated the energy levels, right? So if I go for that, E2 minus E1, if I do that E2 minus E1, E2 we already got it as minus 3.4. I have already mentioned here. For let's say suppose if I'll write down here, no problem. So for E2 minus E1, which means from the ground state to the first excited. So first excited we have already calculated, that was minus 3.4 minus E1. What is the value of E1? Minus 13.6. Are we clear with this? So here I have already mentioned. So this is E2, this is E1. If I go for that, the difference is 10.2 electron volt. first excitation energy of hydrogen atom. Similarly, we can go for second excitation also. There we have to consider E3 and E1, because with respect to the ground rate we have to speak about. Then in that case it is 12.09 electron volt. You can calculate the already values we are having, so go for them, and that is called nothing but second excitation energy. So keeping that in mind, in a very similar fashion I can call the excitation potential also, right, which is nothing but it is the accelerating potential which gives to a bombarding electron sufficient energy to excite the target atom by raising one of its electrons from an innermost to the outer orbit, or simply the minimum potential which provides an electron energy sufficient to jump from ground state to one of the higher energy states. Here earlier we spoke about energy, now we are speaking, just replace the word energy with potential, same everything is. So now coming to the excitation potential, again first excitation potential is again 10 point, the same will be of, that's it, right, work done per charge, and that's what here we are speaking about. You can ask me, sir, the values how they will be equal, look here, it's 10.2 electron volt, that's it, right, potential work done per charge, this energy is nothing but work done, right, so 10.2 electron volt by E cancels out, we will be left over with 10.2 volt, that's it, right. So that's why numerically they are same. Are we getting the point? The same number value. So excitation energy, excitation potential, this will be in the form of energy, this is nothing but the potential. Similarly, ionization energy and ionization potential, the minimum energy required to ionize an electron is called ionization energy, and the minimum potential which would provide an energy to just remove an electron from atom is called ionization potential, respectively the similar kind of same definitions, which is nothing but. Are we clear with this? So with this your atoms theory is finished. In the next session we will go for problems basing on all the equations what we have discussed, and we will continue this chapter. Okay, thank you.